Two moms, two wives, in our 30s, making nursing school simple, sweet, and easy to repeat.
Characteristics of living things. Come on, don't overthink it. We got one. Number 2 is metabolism. And all living things have a metabolism, which it takes certain substances or sources and metabolize them or convert it into energy or nutrients that the living thing needs, basically. Organization, metabolism, growth and development. So living things, basically they grow and they develop in complexities. So an example of that would be like a sperm and an egg coming together to form a fetus, and so it grows and develops in complexity. 4 is regulation. So they have to be in order. And then I'm gonna put 5 too. 5 is responsiveness. How many is it? Regulation, responsiveness. Let me start with responsiveness. Is the body's ability to respond to stimuli using like the senses, eyes, ears, skin, like that sort of thing. Regulation is, I can't confuse it with homeostasis, which is easy to do, but regulation is being able to basically regulate yourself into like a steady state, keeping it in its state that's ideal or optimal for it to function, basically. And then reproduction, which I think I gave the example for reproduction for grow and develop. But reproduction is living organisms being able to come together and reproduce. So for humans, creating future offspring, basically.
Okay, so homeostasis is the process in which a living organism maintains a stable environment internally, no matter what the external environment has going on. So in this case, this person is in a place where there's some fire. And with the fire going, what homeostasis does is there's a body temperature and it's going to sweat to stay in homeostasis. So again, homeostasis is the process by which a living organism maintains a stable internal environment even when the external environment changes. Homeostasis.
It's to be broken down to be able to help us stay in a steady state, basically. The concentration of O2 and CO2, so our bodies need oxygen in order for our cells and stuff to work. And then CO2 is a waste product, basically. But when homeostasis is occurring, then the chemical reaction produces CO2. And at high concentration, it can cause sickness and illness, so it has to be excreted out, which then leads to waste product, which is usually some kind of toxic. So like pooping, like if we don't poop consistently, then that could throw our body's homeostasis off, that sort of thing. pH is with dealing with alkaline and acidity. And so the higher the acidity is in your body, the sicker you can be, I guess. Concentration of water, our bodies is made up of so much water. And so we have to be able to have a certain amount of water in our bodies or put it in our bodies to keep our bodies in a steady state. Volume and pressure, the only thing I can think of is like the arteries and like blood pressure and like being at volume, blood being able to flow through the arteries and stuff in optimally in order to stay in a steady state. Otherwise, then this kind of stuff can lead to high blood pressure, maybe if it's off. And then temperature goes back to our example of homeostasis. So if I'm hot, my body's gonna be triggered to sweat to help cool me down. But then if I'm cold, my body's gonna be triggered to start shivering to help produce heat. So
That's it, be teaching, all right. Alright, so now we're gonna go over the major components of homeostatic systems. So the 3 major components are going to be the receptor, the control center, and the effector. So when you're going through this process, what it's called is the negative feedback loop. So what happens with this is it's the process where the body detects a change and activates mechanisms to reverse it. So in other words, this negative feedback response opposes the initial change. So the receptor is going to be your senses. That is well, first I guess you would start with stimuli, but once you get here, your senses are the receptor. They're the ones that dictate what the change is or what has happened. So, for example, this would be if you are on a treadmill. I'm always going to draw a stick first.
Do what you got.
You're on a treadmill. Okay, so this lady is on a treadmill. So, she's running on the treadmill, and while she's running, she's starting to get hot. As she gets hot, her body dictates or feels the stimuli, so it's going to have the receptors. Her senses are like, I'm hot. So then the receptor sends via a afferent pathway to the control center, which is the main space where it says, hey, we're hot, let's change this because we need to oppose this initial change. So as we're opposing the initial change on the body, the efferent pathway is going to go to the effector and help the body to get back to its initial steady state, which would be like homeostasis. The only way that it can do that is if it does something. So in this case, it's going to sweat so that the body can cool down and find homeostasis again. And yeah.
That's good. Positive feedback is going to reinforce the initial stimulus. So essentially, continue on. Like it's not gonna, its goal is not to stop it, but to continue it to go. Stimulus. Unless a climatic event happens that causes it to stop. But positive always reinforces always reinforces the initial stimulus. So an example of this would be breastfeeding. So the stimulus, so the stimulus is babe suckling on the breast, or suckling on the breast, on boobs, I'm gonna say boobs. And then the receptor, right? Receptor is the boob, basically. And then from there, using the afferent pathway, very basic level, because I think it's deeper than that, or some gland for the receptor for breastfeeding.
That one is sensory receptors in the skin of the breast detect.
So it is the breast? Yep. Okay.
The suckling scent impulses.
Perfect. So then the boob, what it senses, because we sense it is our skin, it sends that information via the afferent pathway to the control center, who then interprets this information to say, this is you sent this letting me know this is happening. So the control center, which is probably one of the glands, or the brain and the nerves, all that stuff, then via the efferent pathway, says to the effector, produce milk. Which then this will just continue to happen. Because what's happening, because it's positive feedback, it reinforces the initial stimulus, which is the initial stimulus is the baby wants milk, so he's going to continue to suck to then keep the boob sending the information to the control center, who then sends it to the effector to continue to create milk so the baby can keep getting it. But the way positive feedback stops is a climactic event. And in this case, it's the baby no more sucking. And so because the baby stops suckling, then the milk will stop producing. Because now we're not reinforcing it because there's nothing to stimulate it.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
Okay.
So good.
Without all that stuff, so non-living. And because it's non-living, it's mostly the chemical reactions.
Yeah.
So it makes me wonder if these chemical reactions, like the metabolism, the concentration of O2 and CO2, these are all chemical reactions which then fall into the abiotic level of organization.
Yes.
To make it connect even further, chemical reactions. But we need all these things to be able to help us live and function, right? And then biotic, living, biology, the study of living things, living, or components, living, non-living, but components. And the biotic levels of organizations, when we get into cells, tissues lead to organs, lead to organ systems, and then organ systems lead to an organism, this is organization. So that's living. We'll get to that, but we're gonna go back to abiotic. And this is also the stuff that's usually microscopic anatomy too. Stuff we can't see or have to look into a microscope. Yep. So then with abiotic, we have atoms, which is the smallest unit of life. Excuse me, let me not confuse you. The smallest unit of matter. Okay. It's not of life because atom is abiotic, so it can't be the smallest unit of life because it's non-living. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Sorry, because
No, you're okay.
So we know it's the smallest.
92 atoms, and they're found in nature.
92 naturally occurring.
Okay.
So there are over 100 elements, however, only 92 are naturally occurring. Okay. Which means they naturally occur in our bodies or in the earth. Yes. Like from fruits and vegetables and I guess dirt and stuff. Okay. 25 of these are essential for life, and they are the true building blocks of the cell. So we need these atoms in order to build the cells. If we do not have them in our diet, our cells will cease to function. So we need these atoms. So some examples of some atoms: hydrogen.
So the atoms that you're listing right now, are those considered the 25 that we need to live, or are those part of the 92 that are just found?
What I'm writing is these atoms.
Are the 25 needed from life?
90% of all the atoms in our body are these atoms.
Okay.
Yeah. So they're part of the 25 that are essential to life.
Okay.
But when this says life, that doesn't necessarily mean human life.
Yeah.
That's just life in general. Okay. That's my assumption.
Okay.
But they're the true building blocks. And so 96% of our bodies are hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, carbon.
That's good.
And atoms are the true building blocks. Because we need atoms in order for them to build the cells. Okay. Which then, once they do their part, then all of that can lead to the living stuff.
Okay. And photo. Go ahead.
Okay, so 2 or more atoms can make a molecule, and 2 or more molecules can come together to make a macromolecule. But some molecules can be considered monomers. So the simplest form of a molecule is water. But water is not considered a monomer because water to water together doesn't create something bigger. But amino acids are considered a monomer, and amino acid is a molecule. And when you get the amino acids together, they can form polymers, and a polymer is a protein.
I see.
Because the 2 amino acids are coming together to build on each other to become a protein.
I see.
Just like the 2 molecules, which are monomers. Not all molecules are monomers.
Yeah.
But the 2 or more molecules can become bigger molecules or macromolecules. You get it?
Yes. And macromolecules can also be considered polymers.
Exactly. Just like a molecule can be considered a monomer.
Gotcha.
It just depends on what the particular thing is.
Yes. Yeah. Let's go.
So proteins, carbohydrates, and triglycerides are also macromolecules, which goes back to the point you was making about trying to think about it from the other way, like when I eat protein or when I eat carbs, how it breaks down.
Yes.
We just ain't got that deep to it. But okay, so there are 2 types of levels of organization. There's abiotic and biotic. But now we're going to talk about abiotic. And abiotic is non-living chemical reactions. And then what you going to say?
And then we're going to go into the first one is...
Oh, atoms.
Yes.
And you're going to say the point.
Yes.
So then you have atoms.
Yes.
And then
atoms, they're 92 naturally occurring atoms, and 25 are essential for life. But what were you going to say about atoms?
Atoms are the smallest unit of matter.
Yes. But how many atoms make what's next?
Okay. So 2 or more atoms can make a molecule, and molecules can sometimes be considered monomers.
Yes. And monomers can also be known as building blocks, which some examples of that would be amino acids, glucose, fatty acids,
And then 2 or more or multiple molecules can make macromolecules or bigger molecules, because macro is bigger, which is medical terminology too. Which then macromolecules are sometimes considered or can sometimes be considered a polymer, which in this instance, just like molecules can become macromolecules, when there's multiple monomers can become polymers, such as.
So for the molecules, amino acids, for example, multiple amino acids then form polymers, which would be proteins, and then multiple molecules of fatty acids would then, for the macromolecules, create triglycerides, and then for the glucose of the molecules or monomers, those glucose molecules would then create carbohydrates.
There you go. So then when you get multiple types or multiple different macromolecules, then you have an organelle. And an organelle is now the structure of a cell. And the cell is the smallest unit of life. So all of these chemical reactions now leads us to life, which then leads us to the second type of level of organization, which is biotic. So now we're in biotic, which is the second level of organization, which is the living components. So first there are cells, and cells are the smallest units of life, the simplest living structures. And then a group of similar cells or two or more cells, similar cells that perform a common function are tissues. And then the tissues come together, two or more tissue types that work together to perform a specific function is an organ. And then multiple related organs that work together to coordinate certain activities to achieve a common function is an organ system, such as your digestive system. But then all of the organ systems that come together creates the highest level of organization, which is an organism, which is a living person, basically.
Thanks for studying with us, where nursing school is simple, sweet, and easy to repeat.
If you found this helpful, please feel free to like, subscribe, and share with a nursing friend.
See you next lesson.